Hello, my name is Salma and welcome to my channel. If you would like to book a personal reading, you can contact me at tattoosandtarot@gmail.com, or you can look up my personal website, which is tattoosandtarot.com, and you can see what other services I have to offer with regard to readings. In any case, I hope you enjoy your monthly Taroscope reading, and any questions that you have, feel free to message me. All right, have a good one. Bye. Hello Capricorns, how are you? Here is your July 2017 reading. I'm sorry that it's late. I'm apologizing to all the signs from here on out for my late July readings. So this month is, been quite a big month for you all. Number one, the sun is in Cancer, which is your opposing sign. Number two, we had this beautiful full moon in Capricorn on July 8th, 9th. And number three, Pluto is in your first house. Pluto is in Capricorn. And Pluto, Pluto is a planet. I see similarities between Pluto and Saturn, right? They're both planets that ask for us to reevaluate and to make changes and to grow and to, in a sense, have some kind of self-discipline. But Pluto is a lot more, is very dramatic, very drastic, very intense and kind of in your face kind of transformation. And it happens without warning, so to speak. And it's also about death and rebirth and symbolic death and symbolic rebirth and the complete reordering and rechanging of things wherever Pluto is showing up. And so Pluto being in your first house, there is, obviously a lot of transformation and reevaluation considering self. And considering how you assert yourself, and maybe there's a rebirth and a death concerning that area. And so, let me sort of go over what's happening astrologically. So, I already mentioned that we have, Pluto in the first house, and it's sort of a catharsis, a release of maybe ideas that you've had about yourself for a long time, or limitations on your self-esteem. There is a release and a let go and a death of those things. And Pluto is going to be opposing the Sun and Mars in your seventh house, which is your house of partnerships, house of one-on-one relationships, marriages, committed partnerships, business contracts, things of that nature, relationships that require that we're in balance with another partner or another person, that we're in harmony with them. And Mars is going to be combust the Sun in your seventh house. And I briefly described what, combust as an aspect, right, means in astrology to Scorpio. And so basically what it means when a planet is combust the sun in a certain area of your chart is it basically means you have that planet and the sun, and it combusts involves the sun, right? Always involves the sun. And so when you have two planets, the sun and another planet in the same sign or same house, right? And it goes beyond a conjunction, right? Where the planets, the sun and the other planet, are so close to one another, and different astrologers have different limits to what is too close, or what degree of closeness then steps into a combust or a combustion, right? And I'm gonna attach a link to one astrologer. His channel is KRS channel, and he describes combust in astrology and what that means in a very in a very articulate and it's easy to understand the way that he explains it. But when a planet is combust the sun, basically that planet is so close to the sun after a certain degree that it ends up being burnt up by the sun, and it ends up being disintegrated by the sun essentially, and the power of that planet the power that that planet has kind of is absorbed by the sun, and so that planet loses its power in that chart or in that transit. It loses its power to act, and the sun just kind of absorbs whatever power or energy that planet has. So with Mars combust the sun, right? Mars being the planet of willpower, self-assertion, action, the actions that I take to get what I want, the warrior within us, what I'm willing to fight for, what I'm willing to do to get the things that I want. And so with Mars being essentially absorbed or, overpowered by the sun and disintegrated by the sun, burned up by the sun, right? Our willpower, our desire to feel motivated, our desire to self-assert, our desire to like that warrior within us feeling kind of absent or feeling kind of washed away or disintegrated, and especially with that happening. And it also represents, right, like when Mars is combust, when a planet is combust, sometimes it means that that planet needed to have been burned up or disintegrated in order for a rebirth of a new understanding of how that planet needs to operate in your daily life and within your chart, within your life experience. So, Mars being burned up by the sun to be reborn and to have a new way of doing things, to have a new way of asserting self, and to have a new way, like maybe the old way needed to die, right? And that, again, going back to Pluto in the first house of old ways dying in order to make room for new and improved, maybe healthier ways of doing things to come in. So Mars combusts the sun in the seventh house, right? So the seventh house being the house of partnership, relationship, how we relate to other people one-on-one. Whereas the first house where Pluto is how I relate to myself, how the relationship between me, myself, and I, and what that looks like, right? So things dying in that sphere, and then things also dying off and being kind of burnt up in your partnership sector, and having to learn how to do things differently in the partnership sector, and having to and having to heal or purge maybe past relationships, walking away from relationships that aren't working for you and that aren't allowing you to step into that Pluto energy of transforming into being, transforming into having a new idea of self, a new relationship with yourself, right? And sometimes we're in relationships and we're in these relationships and we outgrow them and they no longer fulfill or serve. We're no longer able to grow, right? Sometimes we hit a limit in our relationships where we've learned what we needed to learn, and now this relationship is actually keeping me from transforming and growing into the badass Capricorn that I know that I am, right? Like I say this often when I describe, the signs and, within each element and the kind of the development of each sign, right? And the development of, Taurus going into Virgo, going in, like, what is, the development of each sign within a specific element. And that, Taurus finds a plot of land. Taurus, stomps its feet down and says, I am here. I possess this plot of land. I possess this. I possess myself. Like, I am here. Virgo then goes and, sees the devil in the details of how to plan things out and how to make things happen and how to build the house on the plot, right? And then Capricorn wants to make sure that that land, that house, that material, whatever material wealth or whatever has been acquired, right? Is then passed on to the next generation. Capricorn is the dynasty builder. You all see the really, really big picture, especially as being the last earth sign, right? Like being able to build upon the lessons from Taurus and Virgo and implement it not only for you, but into the next generation. And Saturn being your ruling planet is not just about responsibility to self, but responsibility to others, and how you maintain your responsibility, not only, like how you carry out your responsibility and your commitments to other people, right? In your life. And in the public sphere, being ruled by the 10th house as well. So that was your astrological profile. And also Jupiter is in Libra and is in your 10th house, right? So again, expansion in the career, expansion in your public persona, in how people view you publicly, in your career choice and what that means to your identity. And being in Libra, definitely, seeing it as, how are you harmonizing with people in the career sector, or are you doing too much harmonizing? Like, do you need to find a balance between, seeing where others are coming from, right, in terms of career and work, or are you allowing, the opinions of others and the will of others to be too much a part and aspect of what what your career looks like and what your public image sort of feels like. So that is your astrological profile, and now I'm going to get into your tarot reading. And I've been guided to focus this more on relationships, and especially seeing that there's a lot happening between your 1st and 7th house, and there's a lot happening in your 7th house. So I'm wanting to focus on relationships. And when I was meditating over the cards before I began the reading, before I started the video, I kind of felt this sense of feeling fed up. And then I saw this image of water parting, and there's this person standing there and they're gonna just walk through, and it's almost like this sense of walking into the unknown of what was working for me wasn't really doing me any good anyway. So I'm going to walk into this ocean. I'm going to walk, or the parting of the Red Sea, and having faith that you just had to walk, into the parted sea, knowing that it wasn't going to collapse, right? This idea that I'm willing to walk into this ocean that has magically parted itself for me, because what was going on was not really working. So I'm kind of down for whatever right now at this point. And that's kind of, and that definitely being a feeling geared towards relationships, and 7th house activity. So yeah, let's see what's going on. Capricorn relationship reading. Let's do relationship reading, July 2017. Capricorn, July 2017. I just heard the word stalemate, not feeling stuck almost, but nothing's ever really a stalemate, right? Capricorn. Oh, you guys are. Something wanted to come out. Capricorn, July 2017. Yeah. All right. Okay, now y'all are talking. Now y'all are. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right, the Death card. That Pluto in the 1st house, that being the underlying grounding energy happening right now. Oh man. Yeah. there's some heaviness. I feel really like heavy right now. All right, so let's just get into the reading. So this is what I have here. Let me kind of move this stuff out of the way. So this is what I have here. We have the Ten of Swords, the High Priestess, Knight of Pentacles, the Hanged Man, the Hermit, Eight of Cups, Five of Cups, and the Ace of Swords. So that's, what's going on. And I'll pull more cards if I need to kind of clarify on anything. So we have, like I mentioned before, we have the Death card, right? And off the bat, we have, the Ten of Swords, right? And tens, especially a card like the Ten of Swords, can be a scary card. But the way that I kind of view it is that you have pinned yourself down. You have pinned your own self down. And each of these swords representing an idea about yourself, or representing a thought process or a pattern about yourself, or, ruminating thoughts, ruminating ideas. So, but the way that I see it is that these swords represent sort of, Capricorns, y'all are very hard on yourselves. Y'all feel like you have the weight of the world, the weight of your, not the world necessarily, but the weight, because that's more of an Aquarian kind of trope of like, I have to, I'm carrying the water bearer, right? But Capricorn more so feeling like they are responsible for the people in their lives. They are responsible for the well-being and the care of all the people, right, in my life, my family members, my closest friends, my partners, like Capricorn being quote unquote the father, right? And some people, whatever parental figure or whatever figure, in your family went out and was the breadwinner and made the money and financially supported, right? Like that person had a lot of pressure on their back, essentially. So Capricorn definitely, but being a 10, this is also the end of a cycle. This is the end and the purging and the release of all of these swords, right? Like it's gotten to a point where they've killed you. You can't go any further with these swords in your back. You've had to literally lie down. And these swords representing these beliefs that you have to be responsible for person A, person B, like you've had to be responsible for all of these different aspects, for all, even in a relationship, making sure that feeling as though you are the one that had to, that held the relationship upon your back, right? And this relationship not being the healthiest relationship, this relationship being a relationship where you felt stabbed in the back a lot. This relationship where, it needed to end and it's ending and it's over, and it needs to come to a point where like this card being a theme, right? Like an underlying theme of what's happening, right? That this is basically another card that represents death. This is basically another card that represents having to, the end of a cycle. So these swords representing your own thoughts, your own beliefs about what you were or were not responsible for, mainly what you were responsible for, and all of those ideas and those beliefs of what you think you're responsible for literally just kind of pinning you down and you can't take it anymore, right? Next, we had the High Priestess. And, I definitely see this as representing another person who is spiritual, who has a lot of spiritual knowledge. She's very much in tune with her intuition. She's very much in tune with, her highest self, right? Knowing what is in the best highest good for her highest self. Like she's in alignment with her highest self, right? And I see this definitely as somebody potentially coming in to assist you in recognizing like that this right? Like when we're going through this process, when we're going through this death process, right? The universe, spirit, God doesn't just leave you hanging, right? Like the universe will send you these high priestesses, will send you, maybe even the magician, will send you guides, will send you guidance. And even if this isn't a physical person in physical form, definitely, representing spirit and higher guidance working in your favor to guide you and to lead you into where it is that to lead you into this newfound sense of self and this newfound sense of value. Where you're sitting upright and it's a slow procession, but maybe that's what you kind of need right now is some slowness. And also, being the Knight of Pentacles being an earth sign, right? Representing a Capricorn, a Taurus, or a Virgo, and those signs being very grounded and sturdy and not feeling the need to move very quickly to get to where they want to go. Slow and steady wins the race, right? And that's, and being somebody who has a lot of earth in her chart, right? A lot of Capricorn and Taurus is present in my chart. Like that is definitely something like slow and steady wins the race is a motto that I see the value in, and that I really understand. And, yeah, I definitely see like the cheekiness in that too, right? Of like, yeah, I'll get there eventually. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I definitely read the High Priestess as a guide, as another person coming in with spiritual guidance, as spiritual guidance coming into you, maybe downloaded through the intuition. But I like I said before, when we're going through this process, the universe doesn't leave us high and dry. The universe sends us what we need in that time, and alignment with the highest self, right? And essentially, what I believe, right, that Pluto tries to do when it breaks us down, when Pluto or the energies of the tower or the death card come in, essentially what those energies are trying to do is break us down to align so that we can get rid of the things, right? These things that keep us from aligning with our highest self, that keep us from standing upright, that keep us from living right in an authentic way, and that keep us from aligning with this all-knowing, spiritually connected highest self, right? And so definitely, with regard to relationships, like something needs to end. Something's already over, right? And you've definitely have had some help in making that decision. I also see this maybe somebody new coming in who is spiritually connected, who is spiritually, who has conscious spiritual practice in her life. But I more so see this as like a guide coming in to help you move away from this energy, and to sort of move into a place of seeing the value and of seeing the, like, holding yourself up finally. And it's a knight, it's not a king, so we're not quite, we're rebuilding, right? Like, we're not going to go from, you're not going to get yourself broken down by Pluto and then go right back to being the king, right? You might have to be the knight for a little bit. And then, we have the Hanged Man here, and the Hanged Man is, an energy, an archetype, an energy that I also really appreciate, right? Like the Hanged Man has beliefs and has convictions and has certain values, right, that they were not willing to compromise. And as a result of not willing to compromise whatever beliefs or values that they have, they're now hanging upside down, right, from this tree, right? Like it's you know, it's this weird, it's you know, I see it definitely as somebody being persecuted for their beliefs, right? But then I also see it that, you know, this hanged man, he really has very little qualms with being held upside down. He has very, like, he's actually kind of not enjoying, but he's kind of at peace with it. And not only that, but by being hung upside down, he's able to see things from a different perspective, right? Like the idea that, oh, he's being turned on, it's being turned on its head, right? And again, that's what Pluto turns things on its head. It turns things upside down so that we can see things in a different perspective, right? Like you may, like seeing things here versus seeing things here. It's like, oh, like I didn't, you know, that things literally and metaphorically will look different when you're upside down, right? And this halo around his head representing enlightenment. And sometimes being in that place of seeing things differently and being enlightenment can also create physically uncomfortable situations, can create discomfort in a physical sense, right? Because as we're transforming internally and as we're receiving this guidance and as we're healing from all this, as we're receiving this divine guidance and as we're seeing things differently, sometimes that can create situations in our outer world that make us kind of uncomfortable. Sometimes we end up feeling kind of, you know, in this sense of purgatory. And being a Capricorn, you know, being a Capricorn and being, you know, the archetype of the goat, right? The sea goat, and having these horns, and the horns representing being also very much attached to Aries, right? Like, how do I go forth in this world, and how do I charge ahead, and how do I get the things that I want, and how do I get the things that I need, and how do I build, and how do I like charge into this 10th house public sphere, career world, and, you know, make a name for myself, and you know, build the dynasty for my kids and their kids, or for whatever chosen family, right, it is that you want to pass down what you've created to. And so this energy of the hanged man, right, of being, you know, a little bit uncomfortable, of like having to kind of sit on your hands, so to speak, right, and not really do much of anything, right, and just kind of reflect on what was going on here, right, and what happened here prompted this sort of energy. And you know, I know originally that I said that this was going to be a relationship reading, but it's becoming a more general reading that, you know, we can tie this into relationship themes, right? We can tie this into, you know, a theme of something not working out, something over being too overbearing, something being, you know, a relationship that, you know, has completely drained you of your resources and has, right, like he's like there's blood running out of him. This is a vital resource that, you know, these swords are stripping of him. So being in a relationship where maybe even, you know, your partner or whoever, you know, who you were involved with, or even your own psyche, your own self, your own ego, your own mind, feeding you, right, these ideas that, you know, you're not good enough, or you're not like these swords not being stabs in the back, right? Like these swords representing messages that you were receiving either from yourself or from another person that were, you know, hurtful, that made you question your sense of self and your self-esteem, and that allowed you to kind of ruminate on those things, right? And having to regather and regroup your internal knowing of who you are, and that relationship, like you're neither A nor B, right? Like there's not like this extreme, you know, the extreme ways of thinking. And I've also kind of experienced that with Capricorn and being very critical of self and of others, right? That there can be this extreme, like there can be these extreme ways of thinking about the self and the return to the knowing of the true self and the return to the knowing that like I am not either one of these extremes. I can go to these extremes and there are places that I can visit occasionally, but my true and authentic self is here in between these two extremes, all knowing, very wise, in touch with my intuition, strong, right, again, and right, like the rebuilding of that sense of value and like having to slowly, like I said before, he's a knight, not a king, right? So still having to like regain and rebuild, like the slow procession back to the recognition of like what's valuable and like what it is about myself that I value. And in that, it's like right? It's like I'm seeing a connection between this disc, right? And the disc here, right? And that the closer, the bigger that disc gets and the more that we come back to recognizing who we truly are and that sense of self, that it might make us uncomfortable, right? But it's a discomfort that totally beats this, right? So you're kind of like, I'll take this over this. And the Hanged Man just really representing, like a period of kind of suspension, but necessary in order to see things for what they really are. And then again, we have the Hermit. You have a lot of, strong major arcana themes going on, right? And, so now we have the Hermit, and the Hermit sees what's in front of him. The Hermit sees the light. And seeing the light, the Hermit recognizes that, yes, I may be physically alone, right? Like the Hermit has chosen. The Hermit is not alone, like the Hermit is not alone because of this kind of energy. The Hermit is choosing to actually step into solitude and into, being a solitary being for a purpose, right? And that purpose is to recognize that regardless of the physical absence of material items, wealth, other people, whatever it may be, a relationship, regardless of the absence of these things, like I am never alone because the light of God, the light of spirit, the light of my inner being is always with me, right? And I definitely see this as the light, right, that was behind this Hanged Man. And I think another sign got this combination, and I think it might have actually been the Virgos, and before, right, with the Hanged Man seeing things differently, this light, this enlightenment it's there, but it's kind of, it's behind his head, right? So it's not something that the Hanged Man may not even be aware of what's happening with this halo. All he knows is that he's hanging upside down. He's seeing things differently. He has these beliefs and these convictions that he's sticking to, but he's seeing things a little bit differently, right? But with the Hermit, the light is in front of him and he's looking at the light, right? Like the light, the enlightenment in here that may not be consciously occurring is now consciously occurring in this Hermit card, right? Consciousness, spiritual consciousness or consciousness of what this might have been, right, is now facing you right in front of your face, and you're looking at it, and you want to look at it, you want to observe it, you want to see it, you want to learn from it, right? And I definitely am seeing, as these two cards are underneath, or the Ten of Swords being above the Hermit, right? That this energy, these two energies definitely being connected in the sense that, that sometimes this energy does make us want to kind of be alone and be on our own and to reflect and kind of focus on what it is that, that we need to really work on within ourselves, right? Like sometimes that energy does prompt that, right? Sometimes this energy ends up making us recognize and realize that in the light and what's being illuminated here, right, in this moon, that, whatever that relationship was, whatever that situation was that created this Ten of Swords, right? It's not necessary, right? It's not, and there may be, and there may be good things about it, right? Like these Eight of Cups are standing up. There may be good things about it, but definitely the recognition that like, no, there's something better out there for me. There's something out there that is of more substance and is more substantial for me that I can go out and I can seek. And this card again, right? Like for me, this card also speaks to Pluto energy, right? That recognition that something needs to die to be reborn. I need to walk away from something and go on a quest for something else in order to actually recognize and see what is out there for me, and yeah, a walking away from, right, once again, going back to that Mars combust the sun, going back to that rebirth and that change and that death of how you might have done things in relationships, and walking away from how things have stood for a long time, walking away from these Eight of Cups, right? Like these 8 cups could be filled to the brim, could have and Capricorn, y'all are very good at making sure that your cups are filled to the brim, right? Capricorns are very good at making sure that I have these things in line. But even though these things are in line, they still may not be fulfilling me emotionally. Like there's a gap right here, right? And in that gap, the recognition that like, yeah, but like, my emotional needs aren't being met, my spiritual needs aren't being met. And yes, even though you're a Capricorn, right, and earth signs tend to, may have a harder time being in touch with emotions, right? Like, and being more focused on what's happening right now in the here and now, and not so much like it's not so much what I feel, but it's a matter of like, what am I doing about how I feel, right? Like, what am I doing in this physical world, right? But you still have feelings, right? Like there's still, even in walking away, it's like there's still this sense of like, oh, did I make the right choice? Did I make the right choice? Am I choosing, is walking away the right choice for me? Right? But like you still have these 2 cups here. You still have these 2. So it's a matter of perspective. It's just matter of seeing things differently. It's a matter of, turning around to see these 2 cups. But yeah, they're, definitely moving on from something that wasn't fulfilling, and, and perceiving. It's the perception. These cups aren't turned, there's 8 of them and none of them are spilt over, right? The perception that the cups were even spilt in the first place is not, it's not true, right? Like it's not what's really happening. And then, with the Ace of Swords, new beginnings, this could also represent a new connection with an air sign, an Aquarius, Libra, or Gemini, right? It could represent the coming in of something new. But I also really, in relationship to the Hanged Man, right? Like, and how these 2 are kind of set out, right? That the Hanged Man sees things differently. And like the Ace of Swords is a breath of fresh air. The Ace of Swords is, you know, the Ace of Swords is the coming in of new ideas, the coming in of new perspectives. You know, whether or not those new perspectives are going to be good or bad, right? Right? Because on one end you have a healthy reef, and on the other end you have one that's kind of, you know, so the Ace of Swords doesn't guarantee a specific kind of new beginning. It just represents that something new is to come, that something, a renewal, right? A renewal of you know, how you think about yourself, right? Like these, you have the 10 and the Ace of Swords cornering and beginning and finishing the reading, right? And tying it off. So whatever happens here is necessary. Allow this process to happen. Allow this death to happen. Allow this very uncomfortable, right? And as you go through it, it's going to be uncomfortable, right? But what energy would you rather be in? Would you rather be here with 10 swords in your back, or would you rather just be hanging upside down from a tree, right? Like, what would you, like, what are you willing, like, what discomfort are you willing to go through, right? And then even after hanging from this tree, like, and the actual looking at this light, right? Like I said before, initially the light isn't so apparent, and it's more of an unconscious sort of awakening, right? And it turns into a very conscious and intentional awakening, where we're now looking at the light. We're now looking at what it is that needed to be held and looked at, right? And in doing that, there's this kind of back and forth of like, I'm gonna walk away. Oh, but were those cups really, like, are these cups really spilt over, or you know, are they still and you have 2 standing right behind you, right? And the 2 cups standing, right? The 3 of Cups representing friendships, right? And then the 2 of Cups being a representation of partnership, and a new partnership coming in. You know, like I said before, maybe with an Aquarius, a Libra, or a Gemini, or something new making its way in, something new trying to cut its way through. And, you know, the Ace of Swords as an ace, you know, when you're doing when you're kind of looking at relationships, you kind of want to see the Ace of Cups or the Ace of Pentacles, right? Because the Ace of Cups represents emotional new beginnings, right? New love. And the Ace of Pentacles also represents, like, not only newness, but something that's actually happening substantially in the physical world, right? Whereas the Ace of Swords and the Wands are kind of quick. The Ace of Swords can be a bit harsh. It comes on fast. It's you know, it's abrupt. But I think this is definitely the way that I'm, especially in the Ace of Swords. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The Ace of Swords being a card of intellect and thought, you know, a new way of viewing relationships, a new way of doing things, a new way of holding your value and of holding your worth. And that you were going to have to go through these uncomfortable energies to get to this new way of viewing and doing things with regard to your relationship sector. I want to pull a clarifier for the Ace of Swords. Can I get clarification for the Ace of Swords? Can I get clarification for the Ace of Swords? So this card wanted to come out. It's your clarification card. Yeah, it's a new way of doing things, a new way of thinking about things. There has to be And in doing this, and in having a new way of thinking about things, and in having a new perspective, right? Turning around and seeing these two cups, that death is an okay place to be at. The symbolic death, of of not only how you relate to others, but like how, if you've been relating to others in this type of way where it's like you've been allowing yourself to be bogged down by, your false beliefs of, I am responsible for this person, I am responsible for this person's emotional well-being, I am responsible for the financial, like if you've been allowing yourself to kind of be overrun and overworked by all of these different ideas and these different people, or this relationship, that, like, pull those swords out one by one. Pull them out of your back one by one, right? Like, it's a slow, like, these energies are slow and quiet. Like, you don't have a lot of fast. Even the death card is this is a slow procession, right? It's not the Tower. It's not fast and abrupt. It's the death card. This figure on this horse has been approaching for a very long time and has been able to see what's ahead for miles to come. So, when I see the death card, I usually, see it as a transformation that the person in question, or the person that I'm reading for, already kind of knew was happening. Whereas the Tower is like, get ready, something's gonna, some abrupt changes are happening. But yeah, pull them out one by one. Pull these swords out one by one. And look at them. Look at the truth of them. Are these swords real? Like, and whether these swords represent your own negative ideas about yourself, critical, your inner critic, or whether these swords represent the critiques of other people, whether these swords represent the backstabbing actions of a partner, like, pull them out one by one and really ask yourself, is it real? Is this sword real, or is this sword just a perception? Whether it's my own perception of a loss, or of disappointment, or of grief, or is it somebody else's own perception, right? Like, that idea of projection, right? That, like, when I'm pointing my finger at you and saying something to you, I'm actually pointing 3 fingers back at myself, right? Like, and projection being a very real thing, and being a Capricorn and being the critic that you are, sorry to say, Capricorns can have a lot of critical energy within them, right? And really asking yourself, like, what am I really critiquing when I'm critiquing myself, and when I'm critiquing others? And so now let me pull an outcome card for you guys for the month of July. Outcome for Capricorn for July 2017. What's an outcome? That's a lot. I'm not gonna do that. It's a whole nother reading. Outcome for Capricorn July. The outcome, obviously, here we go. Yeah. 3 of Pentacles. 3 of Pentacles. You have support, right? You have help. You're gonna have help in this uncomfortable process of rebuilding a new foundation. The people in this card, they're building a foundation, but there's help. There's 3 people there, right? So no one of these people is alone, and they're kind of underground, right? Like, their ideas, they're new. They're building the foundation, so they have to go underground for a little bit before they can reveal, right? Before they can reveal what is to be held in this pentacle. So, it's a time of rebuilding. It's a time of rebuilding your sense of self. It's a time of rebuilding how you do partnerships and how you rebuild with people. Maybe being able to rebuild with this with the relationship that's caused this, right? But I also see this as rebuilding with a new person, rebuilding with a new partner, and doing so in a way that you've learned. Like they have plans here. They have plans here, and these plans are thought out. These plans took into consideration, what may or may not work, what worked the last time, what didn't work the last time. These plans consider all that didn't work with the previous foundation, right? So, it'll be a rebuilding, but it'll be slow. It's going to be slow, it's going to be, and also, with the full moon that just happened in your sign, right? Like, the needing of something needing to come to an end so that something new can begin, right? And that's essentially sort of, right, like, this was your full moon, right? Needing to walk away from something needing to end, on that 8th, on July 8th, right? 8 of Cups, right? The connections, right? So it's like needing to walk away on that full moon in order to rebuild something, and start from y'all are really good at starting from scratch. Y'all are really good at you see the bigger picture, but it's time to push aside what you might have had going previously. Build something new. But yeah, that is your reading for July 2017. And if it resonated with you, great, I'm happy. And if not, there are lots of other readings that you can find on YouTube for Capricorn. And if you would like a personal reading, you can reach me at tattoosandtarot@gmail.com, or you can go to my personal website, which is tattoosandtarot.com, and I will leave all that in the description box below. And I hope you have a good month, and I will see you in August. Bye.